I want to thank everyone to today's session, NextGen Nexus Los Angeles virtual educational session. My name is Kathleen Tepley, and I am the founder and CEO of Los Angeles Consulting Group. Today's presentation is titled Create a Solid Talent Strategy for Your Family Business. Our goal in hosting these informative sessions is to bring you impactful topics and highly acclaimed speakers. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. For everyone that attends, the benefit of attending is we will send you a thank you email next week, and you'll get some highlights from today's topic. You'll get contact information from our speakers so you can continue the conversation, specifically if you've got questions. And then also we'll share a copy of the video. And with that, we give you permission to share the video or just review it. We really want to encourage that you share the knowledge from today's speakers. Also, during today's session, please feel free to use the chat function and type in questions. Our speakers would like to take questions throughout, and they will be watching, and I'll also help navigate that. So please feel free. I'll also send a reminder from time to time so that you don't forget. If you have a question, feel free to put it in there for them to see. So to open the session, I want to welcome Alan Esrock. Alan is a great friend of Los Angeles Consulting Group. He has shared such knowledge with our family office community. More about Alan. Alan is the founder of NextGen Nexus, the first local global community of family business and family office NextGens whose lives were shaped by working in or working for the family enterprise. Alan understands this world because he started working for Big Man's Shop, his family business, when he was 5 years old. After college, he joined Macy's department stores buyers training program in preparation to return to run the business. And that didn't happen. Alan moved to Los Angeles to pursue his dreams of being a television comedy writer. And after tasting success, he realized that he hated being a television writer and became a leader in the digital entertainment world as an executive recruiter, a consultant, and an entrepreneur. One of his companies, Jitterfingers, was a safe social networking solution for tween girls and their BFFs, with online clubs in 200 plus cities in the US and 12 countries. After Jitterfingers, Alan returned to executive recruiting and was asked to speak at a family business event. He recognized that while the world had changed, the unique needs of NextGens remain the same. He started NextGen Nexus to create a community where NextGens could meet, learn, and grow from each other's experiences. It gives me great pleasure and an honor. I would like to turn over this event now to Alan.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you to everyone for attending today's event. Patricia Angus, who's the managing director of Columbia's Family Business Program, that's Columbia the school, not Columbia the nation, recently wrote a Harvard Business Review article entitled, "What Role Should a Family Business Play in Its Community?" which discusses the social contract between family businesses and their communities. And basically, this is the mission statement of NextGen Nexus. How do you create communities? How do you bring families together? How do you build this together? Well, we wanted to, besides NextGen Nexus, we wanted to build a program so that families, nonprofits, service providers could play a direct role in building this community together. After many discussions, many of them, we developed the Friends of NextGen Nexus LA program, and I'm proud to introduce Heath Goldman of Icon Wealth and Legacy Partners, who's leading this for NextGen Nexus. Heath serves as a financial architect and works with family CPAs, attorneys, insurance professionals, investment professionals, as well as their CFO to help with the creation of a customized financial plan. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce Heath Goldman.
Alan, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Kathleen, always great to see you. As you heard, Alan is the founder of this wonderful organization. I have been on his leadership committee for about the better part of 18 months, and I am thrilled to lead the Friends of program. The Friends of program are going to be the professionals like yourselves who are involved in our directory, who are involved in our programming, who are involved in our content. So if you have a strong desire to be a Friends of this organization without really knowing what that may mean at this particular point, go ahead and send me some an email offline. I will go ahead and put that in the chat section. We are going to have at this particular point 1 to 3 professionals in each category who are committed to bringing families to our content, to our webinars, to our in-person events, and so on and so forth. So it is a wonderful program. Obviously, this organization will be a global organization at some point, right now being launched here in Los Angeles. Like I said, I'm honored to be the Friends of chairperson, and would love to speak with you further if that is something that you're interested in. That is going to be, as I mentioned before, bringing people to the table, promoting our events, and in growing the family business and next gen community. So thank you for that wonderful introduction, and I look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you, Heath. That was great. Okay, so I have a vision. I have a vision for the world and for LA. So when people think about LA, I want them to think about the Dodgers. I want them to think about Hollywood Bowl, and I want them to think about Next Gen Nexus LA. Forget the Clippers. It's about Next Gen Nexus LA. Now, some people might think this is a little grandiose, maybe, but truthfully, if we work together through Next Gen Nexus, through the Friends program, to enable family businesses to share their stories together and work together, we have a chance to create something really special. So I'm so excited about this program, and I'm so excited that Heath is leading it. So now, everyone, for the feature presentation is create a solid talent strategy for your family business with Carrie Ulrich, PhD, Kelly Gunther of Abarachi Group. And yes, it's Italian, and no, I'm not going to try it. Anyone who's dealt with families and companies know that human resource issues are just incredibly difficult to deal with. However, for family businesses, it's like human resource issues on steroids. And that's because you have family and you have business. Now, if you're a manufacturer and your head of production has a drinking problem, well, you know what? That's a really bad thing, and you need to deal with it. However, if you're a family business manufacturer, and Uncle Joseph, who's the head of production, has a lifelong addiction problem, well, all of a sudden you're dealing with so many different variables. It's the biggest nightmare in the world. At least Carrie and Kelly will tell us more about that nightmare. For today, and what I'm really excited about today is that they've developed a great program highlighting human capital issues in classic family business television shows. And the reason for this is people know television shows, people relate to each other, people can relate to that, and it's a way of developing and opening up conversations that otherwise could be very hard to have. So who are these mystery people, Carrie and Kelly? Dr. Carrie Ulrich has an impressive career, focused as a business development in 20 plus years in the HR field. She's the CEO and co-founder of Abarachi Group, the co-author of the book, The Way of the HR Warrior, and the co-host of the podcast Recharge. If there is a podcast, if there's a magazine, if there's an article, if there's someone talking about HR, they've come to Carrie. And little known fact to her, except to Kelly, she is truly the slowest eater in the world. And basically you could conceive and have a baby in the time that she finished off a pastrami on rye. I promise that. Ellie is the co-founder of Paparazzi Group and the co-host of the podcast Recharge. She's an executive with a proven track reference in performance consulting, cultural transformation, change management, et cetera, et cetera. These are two truly brilliant, wonderful, great women, and I am so honored to be able to share their wisdom with everyone today.
Oh, well, thank you, Alan. You're we've known you now for nearly 2.5 to almost 3 years. And you endured a lunch with Carrie where you saw her eat, obviously, but that's the testimony to the slowest eater. But that was just the beginning of a really great friendship with you, with NextGen, Nexus LA, and it's such a pleasure and honor to be on this call with all of you. We know HR maybe isn't always the sexiest topic, but it's an important one in your business. And so what we've tried to do, and Carrie has done a fabulous job of really weaving in, I think, really true to life stories, because we all have a story of HR, it seems. Whether you want to admit it or not, we all have been either at a company, worked for a company, or own a company in which things are happening. And so our objectives for our session today really are to help you think through some of the HR challenges that may exist, and help you think about maybe future plans that you have for HR, whether it's bringing a consultant in or working and developing a stronger relationship with your internal HR team. Whatever it is, Carrie's going to give you some great principles and guidelines to think about. And of course, we welcome your questions, your comments. That's one of the ways in which we thrive in these sessions, is being able to hear what's on your mind. So please go ahead, and if you want to go ahead and chat, or you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, either way, we're happy. So we'll talk through as Alan mentioned, the TV shows, Arrested Development, which is really the foundation. So Carrie will illustrate for you why that's so important to have a solid, stable foundation. Then we'll talk about The Godfather in terms of culture within an organization, because even if you have just one employee, you have a culture. And then Empire, what is your talent plan? Think about all of the succession planning, the individuals that you want to maybe have more significant leadership positions within your organization. Think about what does that look like? How does that happen? What conversations need to occur? That type of thing. So we'll end with action planning, because Carrie and I together believe so much in action, and we want you to feel that the time that you're spending here today is well worth it. So with that, wanted to just briefly ask, and Alan did a fabulous job, so did Kathleen, of sharing and asking people to share a little bit more about where you're located. So if anyone would be willing to come off of mute, or even go ahead and type in the chat your name, your family business, what your role is within that business, and do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite show? Arrested Development, Godfather, or Empire? Is there one that really just speaks to you, or that is very memorable for you? So would anyone feel comfortable to introduce themselves?
Anyone wants to share?
I'll share. My name's Jeff Husserl, and I have a boutique consulting firm called Centrum Associates that provides executive coaching and mediation services. And I'm not a big TV watcher, so I would say that of the list here, the Godfather movie is probably my favorite. Contemporary shows, again, not listed. We've been watching a show called City on a Hill, which probably has some similarities to The Godfather in a more contemporary setting.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. One more.
Okay.
Hi, this is Richard Lutringer. I'm a family business mediator, chair of the Family Business Mediation Group at the FFI, and I'm in Palm Desert with office in New York City as well. My favorite restaurant, my favorite movie series in this area is called The Restaurant. It's about a Swedish family in several generations since and during World War II continuing to run a restaurant and the usual family conflicts all the way. So
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. And
Hey,
as Carrie
can I
mentioned,
double down on that, Kelly?
Yes, please, please.
That show is so good.
The
It is
restaurant.
so
I've not
good.
heard of it. I have to, yeah.
It's the best that we have 17 streaming channels, networks. I mean, our whole world is streaming, but we're actually spending $1.99 per episode to watch the show because
Wow.
it is so fantastic. And from a family business perspective, they just do an amazing job. So Richard, thank you for mentioning that, because it's amazing. It's great television, and it's must-see family business TV.
Great.
Love
My
it.
name is Mark Landay. I manage my family's office, but I still maintain an operating role doing executive recruitment. I put my information in the chat. So I recruit C-suite executives for emerging growth companies, other family offices, or family office portfolio companies. I'm also not too much of a TV person, but I think The Godfather and the Godfather series has great family stories and business stories, and refer to them among my business colleagues regularly as to some of the values and some of the business practices that were played throughout that series.
Thank you so much, Mark, and appreciate it. And you're right. When it came to culture, it was easy to pick The Godfather as the show to really talk about in more detail. Thank you so much. And for more information and getting us through the foundation and talking through Arrested Development and how it matters, my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Carrie Ulrich.
Hey, everyone. I was just thinking, at least you get the restaurant out of this. If you get nothing more, like if you're like, this HR stuff is BS, I don't want to do it. Fine, but at least you got the restaurant. At least you know to watch the restaurant, and that alone is worth it. I really appreciate Alan for all the reasons Kelly said, and also that he pushed us to say, how could we make this a little more creative? HR, as Alan said, can be quite boring, quite not overly interesting unless you tell the stories, like Alan said, of the brother who is, or the relative who is now an alcoholic, who's running the plant. I might have worked in that environment, and it was the brother, and everyone knew, and he ran the plant, and no one knew what to do with him because he was the brother of the COO. So we have those issues. I'm not sure we can fix all those in this 90 minutes, because that is some deep stuff, but at least you have some wonderful mediators and coaches on this call that you can reach out to. But what we're going to talk about, and what's so much fun about what Alan pushed us to do, is let's make it kind of based on TVs or movies, is first of all, TVs and movies, no wonder they're in family business, because it's wonderfully dramatic. And I mean, who doesn't want to see the sister and the brother and the drama? I mean, those are great stories. They're wonderful stories. So thank you, Alan, for pushing us to do that. And so there were so many to choose from. I think Alan and I and Kelly had a list of like 30 or 40, and it was amazing. And so what we tried to do is say, okay, you are a family business, but you still have to, you're still like a non-family business, that we all still need to do certain things. So we took kind of 3 steps in creating this plan. So there's the foundation, which is really important, the culture, and then starting to think about your talent plan. So you really do need the 2 things first. So Kelly and I are always consulting with, get the foundation right, get your culture right, and then you can work on other things. So we're going to use the beautiful and the wonderful Arrested Development. For those of you who don't know, it is the Bluth family based in California, and they are always in legal trouble. In fact, the first show is the dad gets arrested on the yacht. So just think of that. He also, I think at some point, if memory serves me correct, wasn't he building homes for Saddam Hussein, I think? I think he was.
He sure was, yeah.
Yeah. Always in trouble, hiding money in the walls of his business. Everything nefarious when it comes to legal problems they were doing. And so now he's turning over the company to his son, and hilarity and comedy ensues. So if you haven't seen that one, it is really funny. I feel like we should get a cut from like Netflix, Alan, like watch it on Netflix or whatever. Like we should get a cut for promoting all these. Okay, so what can we learn from the beautiful Bluth family? First of all, I hope you don't get in trouble like the Bluths and you're arrested on your yacht. I hope you're just having fun on your yacht. But they do have a lot of legal trouble. Now, some of it couldn't be avoided. So let's like take it down to like regular people, right? We're all not getting arrested on the yacht. We're not hiding money in the walls. If you are, you should probably talk to Heath and like figure that out so you're not hiding money in your walls anymore. But Kelly and I like to talk about the foundation. This is the most boring part of HR. It is what most people know and only know of HR. It is the workers' comp, the hiring, the posters that go up, the legal, I'm going to get sued for things. So while it's boring, it's really necessary because I don't want you going to jail, which you most likely won't go to jail, but you could pay a lot of money for it. So simple stuff like, is your pay stub correct? And guess what? If it's not, I worked at a firm where it was about quite a few millions of dollars in fines because of pay stub. So again, most of this stuff is nothing that you are trying to get in trouble for. That unlike the Bluth family, who again, selling homes to Saddam Hussein, you're kind of in trouble, you know it, hiding money, you know it. There's a lot of things though that you're not, you just don't even know. You didn't even know to do it. So we talk about avoiding legal trouble. We don't want you to get sued for, as what Kelly and I will say a lot is silly stuff. Put up your poster, make sure you have a pay schedule, make sure you're recording hours. Some people don't record hours, and that is the biggest fines, lawsuits, everything is around wage and hour. So if anything in the foundation part, you're like, which one should I focus on? Make sure you're paying people the right way and make sure you have non-exempt and exempt categorized the right way. Lawyers are brilliant in Southern California and Northern California, well, all in California, let's just say. They know what to look for. They know if someone comes to them and says, I was hurt, or I think I wasn't paid right or something, they're like, let me look. And they know everything about meal break periods and all that wonderful stuff. So please, you cannot do beautiful and big things with talent planning. You can't do anything like that if you are in legal trouble. If you have a PAGA claim against you, which is these giant kind of lawsuits now, you can't do anything. So we want you not to be the Bluth family. I don't want you like running from the law. I think he hid in the attic for a while. He also had his twin. This is a wonderful family business drama. You have a twin, and then your twin can take your place when you're going to jail. That's also, if you would like that as an option, that's a good thing. Get your twin to go to jail for you. These are wonderful things that the Bluth family did. I don't want it for you. So I want you to avoid legal trouble. This is, we usually say it this way: documentation, documentation, documentation. We might have just had a client say, well, but I told them not to do it. And I went, did you write it down? And he said, no. And then I said, then it doesn't exist. So you might have the best intentions. You might look at, I could look at Alan and say, we got this right. And we have an oral agreement. I don't care. Write it down, write it down, write it down. Document, 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 document. And have that solid foundation. This is what you need. And this is what we can learn from the Bluths, because they didn't have any of it. And I think in the end, the banana stand, like, burned down and their money was in it. And I don't want that to happen to you. So what can you do? Like Kelly said, we're all about action. We're all about action. And so one of the first things you should do is have that in that solid employee handbook. And again, you might be like, oh, Carrie, why? But there's actually quite a few strategic decisions you have to make with a handbook. You have to think how you're doing vacation, how you're doing your sick time. And you would think, well, I have to give sick time. Well, how do you give it? Do you give it at the beginning of the year? Do you do it by hour? And there's some pros and cons to both depending on your business. So you want that employee handbook, which is fun for family businesses because a lot of handbooks say that we don't employ relatives or they can't report through the chain of command. So it'll be fun with your family business on that section of employment of relatives. But again, you have to think about it, right? Yeah, we can employ relatives, but are we going to block the direct chain? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't know. How are we going to handle benefits and holidays? All these, there are some strategic decisions that happen in the employee handbook that if you do that, guess what? you have a set foundation and you can go back to it. So when some slightly crazy things happen, you have a document that you can go back to and say, you know what, this is what we said, and this is how we're going to manage it. Once you have that, you then can create some processes for your core HR. So again, this is all about writing it down. How are you hiring people? What is that process? How are you rewarding people? Do you have merits? Do you have performance-based merits? Do you have performance discussions? Do you have check-ins? How do you benchmark? So the more you write things down, the more you can document them, your life is so much easier. So we were talking to one of our clients and they were talking about lawsuit. And for those of you who haven't had a lawsuit, mazel, good for you. I'm so happy. For those of you who had to write checks, which we've done, where you're like, I'm right, but I don't want to be deposed and I don't want to do all that. We get it. You just write it and you go away. And we're like, we're so sorry you had to write a check. He's like, yeah, but I documented. And so my check was much less. So this doesn't stop people from suing. This doesn't stop all that, but it will make your lives so much more pleasant because you don't have to spend, right, 20 hours being deposed and saying, and the lawyer says, do you have any of that written down? And you're like, but no, I told him he was really bad at work, or I told him not to steal anymore. I told him to clock in. Doesn't matter. So it will at least lessen the pain. It won't make it all go away though for you. So I just have to put that caveat out there. So anything you can write down around those core processes is incredibly important and will help you. And then the one thing too is take the problems seriously. Don't ignore them. So I think one thing that Kelly and I always tell our managers is, if there is a problem, please don't delay with it. So I'm not saying you immediately fire the person and the person made one mistake and you're like, goodbye. That's not it. But if you start to see performance issues, if you think, I'll kick the can down the road, I'm sure he'll get better, or I'm sure something will, I don't have to bring it up. I don't have to bring it up. Take it seriously. Figure out what to do. Talk with someone. Because what happens is people don't take it seriously. It piles. It all of a sudden goes for 2 years. And then you're in quite a dilemma, and then the lawsuit's quite expensive, or then the person goes on disability, which tends to happen a lot when they're about to get fired. These things happen. So please take the problem seriously. Don't ignore them and figure out. And even if it's a family member, it doesn't mean, like in the Allen situation, the Allen example, or the person who's drinking, you can still document, you can still figure things out, you can still handle it. Maybe you move the person, maybe you put buffers in because it's a family member. Like, you have to think it through, but don't ignore it, because just ignoring it will make it 100 times worse. And the reason we say it is because we see it all the time. Because unfortunately, Kelly and I have seen it just gets ignored, and they're like, I've been ignoring it for like 3 years, hoping it would get better. And instead it's gotten far worse, and the person's far more entrenched, and that person has clients, and it's really hard to manage it. So that's what we learned from the Blues. They certainly did not have an employee handbook. They have no core processes, and every problem, in a way, they took problems seriously, but you know, because the dad was arrested, so they had to figure out what to do. But I don't want you to get to that point. So we're going to stop after each one and ask for questions, because sometimes there's a lot of questions around this stuff. Or you could have already checked out and said, ugh, HR, why did I sign up for this one? I thought it was going to be way more fun than this. So Kelly, I can't see chat.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you if there's any questions around the foundation piece.
Well, Jeff just made a good comment. He said it's really important in California.
Oh,
There's a bevy of attorneys that make their living catching companies that aren't in compliance. And I said, yes, absolutely, there are.
yeah.
And especially around wage and hour, as you were mentioning.
Yeah, and just don't underestimate that. I had a friend who's in Northern California, and she said on the BART, right? Yeah. There's ads for the attorneys have ads like, have you seen your pay stub? Does it look like this? Call us. So, I mean, it is, it's not just, you know, a passive marketing campaign. It's a full marketing campaign, and especially in California. But even if not in California, I still want you to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in California, wage and hour, that's across the country, that those wage and hour claims have gone up. And again, that's all about how you pay people. Are you paying them the right way? Do they get the right breaks? And you might think you are, And when they say, I'm not going to take lunch, and they're non-exempt and you don't document it, guess what? That could be a fine for you later. So wage an hour, wage an hour, wage an hour. Please be careful. Any other questions, Cal?
No, no questions that came through. Anyone have a question that you'd like to submit to Carrie and ask?
Can I do a question? Do you find, the answer is yes, why not? Same answer for everyone. It's yes, ask questions.
Yeah, please ask questions.
Do you find that people are unaware of that they need to do these things and are just lazy?
No, you know what, Alan? I rarely think it's lazy, right? I don't think it's lazy. I think maybe there's a very small percentage who's like, you know what? I know I'm breaking the law. I don't care. That's the Bluth family, right? The Bluth family is a beautiful, hilarious family. If they didn't break the law, it wouldn't be a funny show. So for television, yes. But I think typically what happens is either you have the intention, I'm going to get to it. Like that, I have really good intentions. I'm going to get to, I know it's important. I know I should do it. I'm going to get to it. But what happens? This isn't making you any money. So when the client calls, right, you're going to do that. When there is some kind of drama that happens, you're going to take care of that. So it keeps falling to the bottom of the list. That's one. It just falls to the bottom of the list. And then I think this is where some people try to save a little money too, because they're like, all right, let me just grab this handbook I found on like Line, and I'll just hurry up and do it. That's fine. I'll just figure. And it doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for your family. It doesn't work for your business. And then now you've put a handbook that maybe people haven't really looked at, maybe in it is wrong. We've seen them where it says the wrong thing in there, because you just wanted to get it over with. And so you have to dedicate some time to it. And then there's just weird stuff in California, especially. There's weird stuff across the country. Don't get me wrong. Every state has a little weirdzy, but California is pretty complex. So for those of us who like baseball, I won't say the Yankees, but a very, it's a pretty big deal. It's like the Yankees. HR in California is like the Yankees. And so it's complex and it's difficult. And it's just, I don't think it's lazy. They just don't know. And California does have some weird stuff that if you haven't done it, you might think, sure, let me just calculate something this way. And then you don't realize the downstream effects that has on your business. So you do need some kind of help thinking through that. But I just think people just, in a way, also, I think they probably hope it goes away, right? I don't need it. We're family. How about that? I don't need to write all this down. We're family. It's all good. I trust everyone. I trust everyone too, but I still have like Kelly and I trust each other forever till we're like ride or die, but we'll still have terms in place to protect ourselves just because we need to do that. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question, Alan?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Thank you for asking. Anyone else?
Nothing in the chat now.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Dun, dun, dun. Now, everyone knows this. You might not have known Arrested Development, but you certainly know the Godfather, the Corleone family. One of the things when we talk about culture is incredibly important. And as Kelly said, you have one person, you have a culture. You have two people there. I mean, you're growing your culture. So to ignore your culture it's perilous for you. You have a culture. And if you haven't articulated that culture, people still know what it is. So you can say, oh, our culture is friendly or whatever. You don't know until you articulate it and tell people who you are. So we're like, what do we pick that has a culture that you can define quickly and everyone knows the rules and behaviors and, no, the mafias are pretty good. Now, I'm not suggesting you have a culture like the mafia, but everyone kind of knows the culture. So we went back and forth on The Sopranos versus The Godfather. Kind of same difference. Plus, I'm from Chicago. I know this culture pretty well. For those of you who know Chicago, it is a pretty mafia deep and steeply entrenched in the mafia culture. So I do kind of know some of this stuff on a personal basis. And now this is recorded. So I'm so glad I just said that. I share a little bit too much on it. Kathleen, edit that out. Thank you. All right. So for culture, you need to know it. you need like we joke, but everyone knows the mafia culture, the Godfather culture, kind of understand those behaviors. You know what it's about. We have certain, if you've heard stories about Nordstrom, people talk about that culture where you can return anything at a Nordstrom. And there's this, I don't even know if it's a true story, but it's an urban legend about how someone returned a tire. And the Nordstrom person said, oh, I'll take it. They don't sell tires there. They still took it. So again, I don't know if this is an urban legend, but the fact that you have an urban legend attached to your culture certainly tells you how important culture is. And there's maybe at least what feels like 100 articles written about culture every day. So what is your culture? And what that means is people who step into it, their aligned behaviors are rewarded. So if I clearly articulate my culture, that's going to tell people what behaviors are necessary to survive here and what aren't. And so in the typical mafia fashion, unaligned behaviors are removed. Oh, Fredo. Wasn't that the one, Alan, who got like whacked? Okay. Those are unaligned behaviors are not aligned, and please remove yourself from our culture. But if the culture is well defined, guess what? They might remove themselves or never join. And that's why it was so easy to pick a mafioso, because look at the Corleone family. It is very clear on how you should act, where your priorities are, how you make decisions. That's what's so great about a very defined culture. It helps you make decisions. So if family's first and you protect above all the family and you do not snitch on the family, that's pretty obvious. So that's their culture. So cultures like, if you've ever read anything about the Zappos culture, where they have during their orientation, they used to do it, I'm not sure if they still do it, I think they do, where if you don't align to their culture during orientation, guess what? They'll give you money and you can leave, because it's that important. If you find that you don't want to be a part of that culture, that's okay. We're adults, that's fine. Kelly and I can work with some companies, and guess what? With some companies we can't, because we're just not their cup of tea. And that's okay, because we want to be really clear about that. So then guess what? You don't have to make that decision and hire someone and go, ugh, and then 5 months later, and you've wasted the money and you've paid a recruiter and there's productivity. We don't want any of that. So people want to know what they're getting. So if you were going to join the Corleone family, I'm pretty sure you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. If I said, oh, I'm going to tell my story about what goes on in here, and that's okay, I'm going to have a lot of police friends, I'm pretty sure that culture is not for you in the Corleone family or the Sopranos family. It's very clear what that culture is. Super incredibly clear. So they are the best examples of culture, except again, I'm not saying please use their tactics. It's not endorsed, even though we are an Italian sounding firm. So what can we learn about culture? Because it is incredibly important. You need to be able to articulate your culture. So Kelly and I work with quite a few people where we'll interview, and a lot of people will talk about it. They'll say, oh, it's family friendly. We're development focused. We're high empathy. We love learning, and we love our clients. But the problem is they haven't really articulated it. They haven't said, these are our values. So while everyone might feel it, they haven't quite said it. So they haven't set their mission or their vision or their values. So if you think about a vision, because I always get confused on vision and mission, so I always have to study it. So your vision is what you want to be like Alan said, his vision is Hollywood Bowl, Dodgers, next gen. That's a big ass vision. And it should be. Some of these visions are end hunger. Good for you. Why not? This is where you should aim so high and hook people. So now if I want to be a part of next gen, I know, well, he's swinging for the rafters. No, I don't know, Alan, I might have mixed up a sports metaphor for that, but you're swinging for it, right? And
Absolutely.
Thank you. And so you're aiming so big, that's your vision, and it should hook people. And Kelly and I always say it should make someone cry a little bit. Like you're like, damn, that was so good. I want to work there. This is why my family is in this business, because we're changing the world. Isn't that awesome? And then you drop it down just a little bit to your mission, and you talk about kind of how you're going to get there. So Alan says everyone's going to know it, right? And no one's going to know the Clippers, because no one cares, Alan, about the Clippers. Aim higher than better than the Clippers. but then the mission's kind of how we're going to get there. So it's a little bit the who, what, where, why, how, and when, the 5 W's and the H, right? It's now getting to a little more nitty gritty. And then those values are all those wonderful behaviors that are going to get you there. So if I'm, again, working in the Corleone family, being level-headed, not sharing secrets, not being sloppy with my words and sharing too much with people, these are some of the values that are not going to be aligned, right? And I have to articulate that. So the values, you'll hear a lot about integrity. Okay, yeah, everyone has to do integrity. Okay, fine. But what else do you have? We're learning. We're always continuous improvement. We're customer focused. Yes, we're family oriented, but there's much more that we do than just that. And so those are those values and those behaviors. They're telling the world who you are. You want a story like Nordstrom. You want that urban legend about the tire. You want to hear about Zappos. You want to know the culture. There's also really not so nice cultures. You talk about Uber's culture, you hear about these, and it can damage your brand. And that's what we don't want either. So articulate your culture, work on your mission and your vision and your values. This tells the employees in the world who you are. So then when you hire, look how much easier that is. Because now I already know about you. So now I don't even have to wonder, is this a good match? I don't know anything, Maybe I'm ridiculously gregarious and I want to hang out with people all the time. And then I find out your entire culture is just, we're heads down, we're scientists. We don't connect with people because we're doing research and we're in a think tank. If I only knew that right on your website, I would have known that. Kelly and I were very intentional about our website for a few reasons. One, it helps us articulate what's important to us, but we also want it as a filter. So if clients look at it and say, I don't appreciate that they said BS on their website. That's fine. You probably shouldn't work with us. And there's other people who go, I love that they said that. I want to work with those too. Great. So not only does it help employees and kind of figure out what behavior should be aligned, but it helps you as a business figure out how to make decisions. So a good example was, I was listening to this company. It's out of France. It's called, I think it's F5. And they were trying to figure out COVID and travel and what they're going to do. And one of their values, their top values, is people focused. And I know a lot of people say that, people focused. They really meant it. And they're like, that's our first decision filter. And so what are we going to do that is in the best interest of the people of this organization? So it's a decision filter. So they used that first, made the decision, and then moved down the rest of the values to figure out, to make sure it was aligned. Because if you have no values, if you don't know what you're doing, then every decision point is kind of like, well, I don't know what to do in the future. I don't know what to do. What's important to me? What's my priority? So we all have priorities in our life and our values that helps us make decisions. It's the same thing for your family business. So culture is really important. So now I have the foundation. So I'm not going to jail like the Blues. I have a culture that everyone knows across the world, like the Godfather, because everyone knows the Corleone family. And so then we're going to get to the next part. But it's really important to have those two pieces. If you don't have those two pieces, you can't do the next work. That gets really, really difficult because you don't know who you are. It's like as humans, if we're not self-actualized and self-aware, we can't evolve to the next place in our lives. Same thing with the business. If you haven't set that foundation and you haven't set who you are and your intentions, it's very hard to drive and grow and evolve if you don't know those things. So I'll pause there. That is a lot. You might be just watching The Godfather right now. I don't know. You're like, damn, I got to watch that show again. It's a good culture. Cal, what questions do we have on culture? One of my favorite topics, by the way.
No questions came through, although Jeff again mentioned his favorite quote on culture is "Culture eats strategy for lunch."
I do love that one. Thank you, Jeff. It's so important because you can have the best, every company has a strategy, right? What's the difference? It's the people who are doing it that get you there. So how many restaurants are there? How many driving companies, right? How many toothpaste can you buy? And so everyone kind of has a relative, you can't come up with a brand new strategy. I mean, sometimes people do, but You're still trying to make money. You're trying to figure it out. You're trying to create a new product. It's the people that will make it so much different for you. So culture, 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 but it's one of those things that gets ignored a lot too, right? I don't take the time to understand it. I don't take the time to articulate it. What's really hard too is shifting that culture then. And so I had this culture and it was really good for us when we were small, because that's what happens with a lot of these companies, a lot of family businesses, right? You start and you're small and then you grow and grow. And that culture tends to shift a bit. What you need and those values, some of them might stay the same, but you might need more specialized people. You might need more international people. So things shift and transform. And that's also a hard thing to do, is to focus that much on a culture and shift it as well. Go ahead, Cal.
There's a question from Richard. It's kind of piggybacks off what you were just talking about. Can you discuss generational conflicts about culture? Because those never happen, right, Richard? They
never happen. Never, Richard. I don't know what you're talking about here. and it's not that we just invented it either, right? Because I swear I've been in the business long enough to hear all the generations say the exact same thing about the generations below them. It's hilarious. They don't understand. They don't work as hard. Boomers say about X. X now says about millennial. Millennial will say about the Z's, I think is next, right? Hear the same kind of complaining sometimes, which is fascinating to me. But I think what's interesting is there are some of those generational differences that are pushing hard. So let's take a relatively easy one, is the millennials and the Z's who are really pushing on this remote work. So you see this culture of, what if I had this culture of we're so connected and we see each other all the time and we talk and we love each other, and that the way we do that is because we're close. And now all of a sudden, guess what? I have to be digital or electronic. I'm through Zoom all the time. And there's people, I was just listening to a talk today actually, and it was with Zillow. So we all know that wonderful, look up your home and then get depressed that it's not worth as much as the one next door, whatever app, whatever you're looking at. And they were talking about how hard it was for their generation of, a lot of the executives were 40s and 50s, and how the shift to remote work and work anywhere, because they've moved to a work anywhere, not work from home, work anywhere within the United States. And how the executives had such a harder time with it because they're of the age group that is used to seeing you and used to being close to you. And I manage because I see you, and I manage because we sit next to each other, and I manage you and I develop you. And now all of a sudden I have to do it over Zoom. And the millennials and the Z's were like, that's fine, we can do it. You can do it over online. And so the whole way that work is now shifting. I don't know if you've seen some of the stats on school age kids who are like, I think in LA alone, it was what, 50% of them were like, I'd rather stay at home. I get it. I'd rather be online. So you talk about that generation, not only COVID is now shifting the entire way your culture is going to do work. So maybe you didn't want to have that shift in your culture, but you do now. And now you have to figure it out. So there are quite a few generational differences like that. But at the end of the day, each person kind of wants to be heard. They want to understand. They want to be heard from their manager. They want to be cared for by their manager. So when I did some research on the generations and how they were looking at CSR and corporate social responsibility, all the generations just really wanted to be heard and respected, each one. Now, the way you did that was different, right? So it was different the way I engaged and cared for Kelly or Alan or Richard or Kathleen, but I needed to be cared for. That was it. Maybe Kelly just wants me to talk to her once a week. That's fine. That's fine. Then she's cared for. Alan, I need to talk to him every day. Richard, he just wants to get like money. But they all wanted to know that there's a connection and cared for. So that cut across all generations. But it's just interesting now to see how the COVID and technology has shifted your culture, even if you don't want it to shift. I want everyone to still be here. There was a lot during COVID. There were a lot of cultures who didn't want to do work from home, and the HR people were asking a lot for like 2 years asking. Then it shifted, then it happened. And that's the meteor that hit the dinosaurs, right? So this is COVID for us. Thank you.
He asked a good follow-up question to that. What about LGBTQ and diversity issues?
So being in HR, we've seen those issues for a very long time. So now they're at its surface. So now as your culture, you have to address that as well, or not, but make a conscious choice how you're addressing it. Because there have been some companies who they truly believe it. They've said it, they encourage it, they want people to talk about it. And there have been companies who have been a little inauthentic about it and said, yeah, it's important. But then when it came too close or touched too close to home, they said, shut it down. That'd be base camp. If you don't want to talk about it, don't talk about it. That's part of your culture, right? Know though, there's consequences of that. There might be some people who don't want to join your culture because you don't talk about it or because you don't have a DEI council or anything like that. That's your choice on a culture. But if you do, be authentic and honest about it and really embrace it. Because if you don't, what happens is then people will start talking about it and going, yeah, let's talk about inequity in pay, or I want to have a diversity group, or let's talk about systemic racism. And then you go, oh, I don't want to do it. Then you become base camp, and the blow up is far worse than that, than if you're consistent. So we were just talking to someone the other day about consistency as a manager. Guess what people love? Consistency. Even if you're a consistent ass, they at least know you're consistently an ass. That's fine. If you're consistently a great person, they're like consistent. What people hate and what employees can't stand is the inconsistency. So if I'm on a Monday, I'm so lovely to Kelly and I tell her how wonderful she is and I love working with her. But then on Tuesday, I'm a horrible person to her and I'm like, oh, this work sucks. Kelly has no idea how to come into work anymore. She has no idea. Is Carrie going to be great? Is she not? It's inconsistency that kills my relationship with Kelly, but also kills the culture. So be like, is it BlackRock, the financial? I think they're BlackRock, right? I've heard quite a bit about their culture and cameras. They encourage people after you give a presentation, you have to send feedback to the person saying like 5 ways they pretty much suck and what they could do better. That's their culture though. They are very crystal clear on it, crystal clear. So if I want to join that, great. If I don't though, that's fine. But be clear on your diversity and equity and inclusion and be sure that it's authentic and you actually mean it because people are really good about seeing through bullshit. You sometimes don't think they will be, but employees are brilliant at it and they'll know that you don't mean it. I hope that helps, Richard.
Kara, I think it's also interesting when you think about family businesses and consistency, because it's just not, once again, a work environment. It's you have mom in, or you're mad because the kid threw up and all that type of stuff. So every time you think about consistency, it's just so much more difficult to do because you're bringing family business. It's very difficult not to bring family business issues into the business because it's family. So I think that's something families really have to try to figure out, how to, even if they're crazed with each other, how that doesn't seep into the company culture.
Yeah, it's such a good point, Alan, because first of all, you're right. Family business adds a layer of complexity to everything. So it's just a blanket of complexity. And I think, but how do you articulate, how are we going to manage that? So we work with a family business and you would never know their sisters. Like you just wouldn't know it. You just would not know their sister. They must have fights. They must. I would never know. And I wouldn't even know their sisters. I mean, they have a different last name, so that helps, but you just wouldn't know it because I think they've really determined whatever happens behind the door. When we walk in at 9 a.m., we get down to business and that's the most important thing. And so having that expectation, that clarity and that consistency of how we're going to look to the employees is incredibly important. But again, you only had that because they talked about it. They have a contract on it, not a written contract, but they've discussed their culture and what's important. And if you're sloppy and you're not consistent, and then you're going to yell at each other because of what happened at the Thanksgiving dinner, inconsistent and not helpful to all the other non-family members who are like, oh, they're all in a bad mood today. Now what are we going to do?
There's a great question, Carrie, that came in from, and I want to say it's Francisca, and if I apologize, I know you mentioned your name at the beginning. If I said it incorrectly, I apologize. She asks, who is in charge of the consistency of the culture? Sometimes this is discussed at the C-suite level, but the day-to-day inconsistencies happen at the supervisor-employee level.
I always like the setup question. I love it.
Yeah.
HR have this discussion with leaders ridiculously, and so many times. It's ridiculous. So here's the bottom line. Culture is the senior executives and a leadership team. They set it. They set the tone for it. Those are who the people look at. So that's the whole walk the talk kind of thing. If you're up there saying diversity is important, I love LGBTQIA, and they see something that shows that you're not, employees see it right away. They do not notice HR. By the way, no one cares about HR. They don't. Kelly and I are fine with that, but no one cares. All they care about is, here's the executives. What are they doing? Are they consistent with the culture? So we in HR always tell the executives, they're the ones who set the tone. Sometimes they go, isn't it HR's responsibility? And let me try to put it on them. It's not. Now, we can run the programs. We can help you decide the vision. We can do all of that. And Kelly and I can be the most beautiful examples of your culture. But if the president isn't, if the CFO, if the CMO, it doesn't matter. And so once you get that leadership team aligned, then you got to move down. And then you got to look at the managers, because again, employees have an amazing ability to see through bullshit. And if the supervisor is not aligned with that value and the culture, employees will know. And then guess what that looks like? It looks like the CEO doesn't care. The family doesn't care. Here's this person who is in blatant violation of your culture, and you let that person go. And those stories, unfortunately, spread like wildfire, because people love gossiping about that. They rarely love gossiping about that person is such a great cultural ambassador. Like that doesn't, I mean, like come on. If we did, there'd be way different family business TV shows, right? We like the drama and the death and the horror and the Succession. We didn't talk about Succession, the TV show, but we like that stuff, not like goody two shoes. But culture sits with executives, 100%. You cannot give it and offshore it to HR, but HR can do all the grunt work to get it ready and to get people aligned and to have implementation plans and all that great stuff. And then once you get the top level ready, you start going down the organization. Because even if you have great supervisors, but the leaders don't get it, it won't be helpful to your culture. Thank you for asking. That was like a planted question, but it wasn't.
It's a very good one.
Any others?
Thank you. No, we're good.
Okay, let's talk about Empire. Who knows about Empire? So this was relatively recent. We picked this one because Lucius Lyon, first of all, best name, awesome. Lyon, Lyon, but done to be called a lion. He, guess what? He thinks he's going to live forever and have this incredible record, Empire. And then he's told he has ALS, and now he has to figure out who is going to take over his business. And then drama ensues, many deaths, drama, but done in a musical style. So again, maybe you could have maybe singing songs during your family business. It would be fun. All right, so what can we learn from this dramatic telling? Life doesn't go to plan. So now you have this beautiful culture, you have this beautiful foundation, you've done all these things, and you are going to be at the head of this family business till you're, I don't know, 92. Or I'll get to it tomorrow. We'll deal with it later. But guess what? It doesn't go to plan. You're told something, right? You are sick, which is horrible. Or something like, I have an opportunity. I'm going to go live in Italy. Or guess what? The daughter you always thought was going to take over has decided she's going to be a chef now, and she is no longer going to take on. Or you're like Alan, who doesn't want to be a part of the family business anymore. Oh, man. What are you going to do? Life doesn't go to plan. So you have to have a strategy. Lucius didn't have a strategy in Empire. And so what he did was pit everyone against each other. And then his lovely wife came back from jail and wanted to take over. So it can be dramatic. That's why I kind of like the example of Empire, because no matter, even if you have the most beautiful plan, even if you're like, all right, these are my successors, here's how I'm going to develop people. it's very dramatic. I mean, it's dramatic in a non-family business. There are people who are upset. There are people who are like, I can't believe I've given 20 years to this company. You're telling me I'm not the next vice president. I'm not the next president. And now you add the incredible drama of, I am your son and I am not the next CEO or president. Like, are you kidding me? You picked Timmy, you picked Janie, are you kidding me? I hate you. I don't even want to be a part of this family anymore. So this is when you need coaches and counselors and executive help, because this is complex as heck. So again, incredibly complex and hard in any company. And then you add the complexity that you're related to the entire succession plan. Holy smoke. So this would be like a 10-hour part series, Alan, and it'd have to be individual by individual to talk about it, because it's all psychology, right? So I'm going to at least try to give you the bones of it, but please know, I certainly know how hard this is and how painful. And for those of you, you know the stats that, what is it, like 20 to 30% drop in revenues when you give it to a family member, a child. If unless they have an MBA, then that bumps it up a little bit, but it's hard to go the continual generations. And also you could have really great talent who's been there, who's not family, and that they might leave because they don't get to be a leader in the business. So again, how do you clarify that to people in having this talent plan? But again, I don't want you to be like the Lions, deaths involved, people thrown down the stairs. I don't want it to be that dramatic for you. I don't. But it feels like it. That's the thing. It does feel like it. And I'm sure someone wanted to throw someone down the stairs at some point during your talent plan. There's no way they didn't. But please don't, because then we're go back to you're in jail now. And I don't want that. I don't want you in a cycle of going to jail. So what can you do? What can we learn from Lucius? He didn't have, well, first of all, he thought his legacy was forever. So what is your legacy? What do you want? And this is a really hard exercise. This is an exercise that when you're on this is really it. When you're on your deathbed, what do you want to be known as? What did you want to make an impact for? What is it? What do you want them to say at your funeral? And maybe it is, this company must go to a family member, or maybe it's not. I don't know, but you got to think about that. Maybe I want to work till I'm 80. Maybe I don't. So what do you want to be known for? What's your legacy? That helps you then figure out what you want in the future. Is it necessary for you to give it to a child? Maybe you said, you know what, no one wants it, and I got to rethink this. Is this my dream or is it their dream? This is, again, why it's so complex. And even in non-family businesses, I've worked with executives where they're like, she's going to be the best vice president. And I talked to her and she's like, I don't ever want to be vice president. Please don't make me vice president. I don't want to be it. Now, she wasn't his daughter. He felt like she was his daughter. Like they had that kind of relationship, and he was devastated. So imagine, again, it's his real daughter, it's his biological daughter. And she's like, I don't want to be a part of it. And he was so devastated. So you have to define what's important to you. You have to think about, okay, what do I need? What is it important to give it to the family, and who, and why am I doing it this way? Am I giving it to the first son just because I think it's the right thing to do? Kelly got into a pretty big argument with someone who was just going to give it to a first son and ignore the daughter. And so that was a fun argument to witness. I like that one. So now you've kind of figured out who you are and what you want. Now you have to look at your current talent. And this is where you really have to think about, okay, I know my culture, I know what's important, and now what skills are important, and what do I do that this person needs to be? So I have amazing community relations skills, I have good sales skills, I have good financial acumen. This person also needs to be able to understand the complexities of cryptocurrency. I'm making stuff up. But what are those skill sets that person needs in order to become this role? And maybe not you're going to take yourself out of it a little bit, but as the president, CEO, what does this person need to be like? What are the skills that this person needs? This is really tough work. I am not trying to like, I just want, this is like, it's so nice to see 4 steps because you're like, oh, that was like, check, check, check. I'll do it this afternoon. No, this is really hard for most companies to do. They struggle a lot, not only because it's thoughtful work, but it is not urgent work, meaning it doesn't feel like, oh my God, we got to go sell. And that's more urgent. And this gets, again, pushed down until there's, oh my God, someone's sick or someone doesn't want to take over or something like that. So it's, again, it's like insurance. Think of it that way. You need it. You got to plan for it. If you don't have it, you're really screwed. So you got to analyze what you need. And then you look at your talent and you go, okay, well, here's what I need. Here's my talent. Here's Carrie. She checks like 3 of the boxes. She's got a lot of gaps. I'm a little concerned. I'm not sure she's going to be able to do this. So now, is Carrie still right? Or can I develop her? And here's like a 5-year plan, because succession planning is, we used to do, are you ready now? Are you ready in like 1 to 3 years? Are you ready 3 to 5 years? So this is a long-term plan. You can look at someone and say, I think they're ready in 10 years. And these are all the things I'm going to do for them. And we're going to develop them. And then this is when then you start crying when they quit, like with 1 year left of the plan. They're like, I don't want to do it. You're like, no, we've been working with you for 9 years. So again, you have a couple people, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. And you have to make a plan then to address all those gaps. So you can see why, again, this falls to the bottom of the list, but is so important, because I don't want you to be like Lucius Lyon and like bullets flying and you're sick and you're making bad choices because you're ill and you're desperate and you don't know what to do. So this is a really thoughtful plan, but it can only happen when you know your culture, you know what the role needs, and you really understand your talent. Then you can find gaps and make the plans to address those gaps. But it's really tough work. Really hard work. Get people to help you, get your coaches, get people to really think about what you need and how to make it. Because this is probably one of the toughest things, because like Alan said, it's so complex, and these are your children or your brothers and sisters that you're going to have to tell one of them or 5 of them that the role is not for you, because only one person gets it. It's not a community effort. So one person gets it. So Kel, what questions do we have on the beautiful world of talent planning?
Mark made a comment on stressing the difference between important versus urgent.
Yes.
And really recognizing that there are certain important things that you shouldn't delay because you want to be in control of it before it controls you, of course. But then it's all about the urgency too of, you don't want to be behind the 8 ball where all of a sudden now you do have to make a decision, and you may not make the wisest decision because of the time frame in which you're having to make it.
That's so wonderful, because this is incredibly important, incredibly important, but it will never feel urgent except for one day when you leave or something happens, right? So all this work, that's why I keep thinking it's like insurance. It's like you pay in all this insurance to pay for the one car accident you get into or something, but you've been paying for 10 years. And if you don't have it, boy, that's horrible. And you do make really poor decisions under time frame. Why do you think all the reality shows put a time frame on them? Like, if you could just make the meal, if you watch Top Chef, if you could just make the meal in like 2 hours, they would be all like pleasant and no one would yell at each other. But they put you in 30 minutes and then you lose your mind because you have only 30 minutes to do it. And so succession planning, when you see these companies who have a succession, like let's say even Bezos handed it to, is it Andy? But he handed it over. So there's not this kind of, oh, what's going to happen? He didn't like leave without a succession plan. So you need to think about talent planning, but I love it's important, but it will never feel that urgent until it is urgent. And then if you don't have it, you're in trouble. And there's nothing you can do, because you can't do talent planning in a day. You just can't. I wish you could sometimes, but you cannot. It is a painfully slow, but important and thoughtful process. Thank you. What else?
To which Richard just chimed in and said it's all about communication and listening, which it is. It's having the conversations early, and talking with your family members to see if there is a race to who gets it, or there are a couple people competing for the job, that you have those conversations before something happens. Now those two are fighting and it creates chaos for a family business because now the culture is, what is the culture? So
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that communication is so key. And it's just so much too of, I want to please you. So I want to say that I want the job, but maybe I don't, but I just want you to be happy, or maybe I really don't want it, or maybe I do, but I'm not saying it. And so how do you start having those conversations and talking to people? Really important. What else, Cal?
One just came in. Mark said every leader should have a successor, particularly in a family business. Yep, absolutely, Mark. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because it's kind of like having a will. So if you don't have a will when you pass, and you pass, and because we're all going to do it, that's one thing that's certain. This is where HR brings the entire room down. Let's talk about death. But
such a buzzkill.
I know. Kelly and I are used to being buzzkills at all times. But if you don't have it planned out, if you don't think about your will, what do you leave behind but chaos? And so people are fighting, or people, whatever, they don't know what to do. Do I bury her? Do I cremate? Like, what do I do? You have no idea. Your family business is the same way. You're leaving people you love the most behind to kind of figure out what to do. And they don't know. So you got to have this plan. Every leader needs to have a plan, regardless if they're in family business or not. Like, who's your successor? We used to encourage every leader at like director level and above to have a successor, to be thinking about it for continuity of business. And that wasn't even family. So what else, Cal?
That's all the good comments I've come through the chat. So love it.
Good. Anything else? Any other questions around culture? Sorry, talent planning or culture or foundation? I'll leave it open.
I think we're good to continue.
Okay. You okay, Alan?
Let's keep going.
Okay. All right. So now here's the activity. You're like, oh, activity. And I will wait for people to talk. So I'll give you a few minutes. But what are the top 3 actions you want to take from this webinar? So one was already watch restaurant. All right. So you already have one. You already have one that you need to do is watch that. And if you haven't seen Arrested Development or Empire, or if you haven't seen The Godfather, so that's one. What are some other actions that maybe through this you went, yeah, I should probably work on that, or hey, I got that one done and I want to work on this, or so I will wait and be patient because I do want to hear, because we're all about action. And the things about webinars that happens is you listen and you go, oh, that was good. And then you immediately end it and go to another meeting or go to another topic. And then you totally forget the great actions that you wanted to do. So this is where I ask you to like write it down, put it in something electronic, written, whatever you do to put your action items. But what is at least, I'll give you just one if you have one. If you're an overachiever, you have 3, but at least one action that you can take to help yourself and not be stressed out. We talk to a lot of leaders who are stressed out about HR and talent and like, ugh, what am I going to do? This keeps me up at night. I don't even know where to start. So what's one thing you can do? Because I don't want you to be anxious or not sleep well.
The thing that resonated with me was really trying to understand and define your culture, and that in fact, it's the foundation of everything. Because if you don't understand it, then how can you create policies from it? And if there's any formal, I don't know if you have a formal exercise or any kind of formal things to talk about. Now, how does one define, do you have the ABCs of defining culture? Or I just think that's, that has to be where it all starts.
Yeah, you're so right, Alan. And I think some of it is we always start with what's your vision, right? So you start with the highest and then you start working your way down. There's lots of good exercises online, but it really is get your best brainstormers with you. And what do you want people to say about your company? Like Alan did it. He's like, I'm going to be up with the Dodgers. I want this to be so well known. That will then guide what he does with his business. So that's how you start. So you start with your vision. And if you don't have one, start to create one. And if you have one, look at it and still make sure, does it work? Is this still what we want? Vision usually stays around for a while, but you might have updated it. But thank you, Alan, because culture. So important. And again, important and sometimes not urgent, because people go, oh, we have a culture. Everyone knows what it is. Don't worry about it. But that articulation of it. Thank you, Alan.
Richard said, love your children for who they are.
Oh, I love that. Palm does it in the house. Look at
Yeah.
that. It's
Mark,
so true,
yeah,
though.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say it's so
Yeah,
true, right?
yeah.
Because don't put your own crap on them sometimes. They might not want it. I will tell you, my child, not that I ever thought he'd want to be in HR, but we joked with him. I'm like, wouldn't you want to love to take over a Brachi group? He's like, oh my God. He's like, no, I don't want to ever take over HR. Your job sounds horrible. All you do is talk to people all day. But I could have pushed him and tried. No, never. What else, Kelly? Sorry.
Mark said exit plan, very helpful to have and make sure that you are clear on it and revisiting it frequently because things change so quickly in life, as we well know. And Francisca mentions she'd like to know better tools for assessing talent of next gen in the family business, in particular before they get involved in it. and taking the analyzing the talent issue that you may have.
Oh, well, I'll give a plug for assessments. So we are big believers in psychometric assessments. So anytime you can do an assessment, our favorite is Caliper. So CALIPER, just like it sounds. They're based out of Jersey and have been around since like the 1950s. And maybe Cal, if you want to put it in the chat.
I'm going to. I'm doing that right now.
Yeah, I knew. I could tell. I'm like, she leaned in. She wasn't fit in there. The reason we love that one is it has a cognitive component and a personality component. And we talk with a lot of people about, does your profile, your traits match what you want in life? And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So we were just with someone, to your point, that she's in a secretarial type role. And she's supposed to be super thorough and super detailed and very gregarious. And the manager's like, she's horrible. Like, what? I don't even understand like why she can't be smart or anything. And on this assessment showed that she's pretty much a STEM focused math genius, but has no attention to detail. She is so bananas in the wrong job. All she wants to do is be in a think tank and figure out how to like fix bridges and rockets. She is supposed to be a front-facing kind of receptionist. Disaster. And instead of letting that go on for years of saying, why you're horrible, what's going on, if you just did an assessment, you would have seen, oh my goodness, this is not right. You're in the wrong place, honey. There's trouble. You got to go somewhere else. And so I think the earlier you can do these assessments, the better off people are to have the language to describe what excites them, what they want to do, because sometimes you just fall into it and you can't articulate it. So the more assessments you can do, the more you can analyze talent from that. You get like 360 assessments. You need data to analyze talent. Even if you know this person because they're your child or your brother, you don't know this person. Get more data. 360 psychometric assessment. Go have them work somewhere else and then come back in, right? Get different points of data, get that input to help you assess, because it's incredibly important to assess the talent. Then it gives you a different language. It gives you a more neutral language to talk versus, I know you because I grew up with you. Instead, like, here is some data that tell you what you're really good at. And now I don't know if that's going to work here, or maybe it will and it's a perfect fit. What else you got, Cal?
So I'm just kind of responding to some comments here. Mark made a plug for Trimetrics, which has a cognitive component, acumen, and behavior type of assessment.
Perfect.
Jeff mentioned he's biased, but he puts in a plug for Hogan, which we know well as well.
Hogan's a great one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, there's so many. You just find one that you like.
Yes.
Use it.
Any type of assessment is helpful. It just helps you get more information about that individual person, so that if that is someone that you want in your, to remain in your organization, take an additional leadership role, you can provide the coaching, get an executive coach or something to help that person along if there's areas in which they may struggle or would just benefit from additional practice.
Yeah. Okay, what are some more actions that someone, we have about like a minute left. So you can hopefully have one more person reply and then you don't have to. That's the way you wait this out.
Anyone else have a favorite assessment or anything? Mark, thank you for putting your LinkedIn profile. That's a great idea. So we can stay connected.
What are any other actions from this webinar that you're like, all right, I need to write it down. I want to take it, because remember, it's going to be important, but not urgent. So as soon as you get off this webinar, you'll have 5 urgent things to deal with.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a really behemoth type goal either, or action. It can be something relatively simple, but something that you'll do.
All right, I'll just pause a little bit more. I got one more person. Come on now. You can do it. There's only 5 minutes left. One more person. I used to teach mediation, and the hardest part for the mediators would they would have to sit in silence as the 2 parties would just stare at each other. And the mediator always wanted to say something. And we would go, no.
So ladies, what about a final takeaway? The audience has really learned a lot from today's conversation. So thinking about what you've shared today, what is one takeaway that you think they should think about stepping away from this conversation?
Thank you, Kathleen. So ready? This is the boring one, and why no one wants to talk about infrastructure. Start with your foundation. Boring as hell, but please, if there's one thing that you take away from today, is I want a talent plan. I want it. It's important. It's not urgent yet, but it's super important. Work on your foundation and work on your culture. You do those 2 things, the talent plan will be much easier.
And Francisca did mention she's going to review the assessments that you suggested, and Mark will watch The Godfather again.
Oh,
so I do love that. I do love that. It could be watching a movie and maybe thinking through some of this stuff too. So excellent.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that. Foundation, culture, articulate, cover your butt.
We'll add that to the thank you email next week. A couple highlights so that people remember, reinforce.
It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. That's for sure.
So just a little bit about us as a Bracci group. We are truly unconventional HR consulting. So we do like to have fun, and we also like to get work done and make sure that we're really leading based on how you'd like to be led. So we are always on a mission to improve organizations, and ultimately what that does is it improves the lives of employees. They go home happier, their families are happier. There's a trickle-down effect to that. So visit our website if you have any questions, even if it's just a chat and talk and maybe get some ideas on situation you might be in. We're always here for you, so please just hit us up whenever you'd like. And we have on the next slide all of our contact information as well, social media platforms, and of course our Recharge Your Life podcast that Alan gave a shout out to earlier. If you're interested in being a guest, we'd love to hear from you, so feel free. I'm sure a lot of you have some great stories you'd like to share. So it's a non-HR podcast, so it is that, I think that might appeal to many of you, number one. But number two, it's all about a decision you made that changed the trajectory of your life. So what is something that you did that really changed your life, you know, for the better, the worse, whatever. But we're always interested, and we've had some great stories. We have about 30 episodes now on your favorite podcast directory. So feel free to listen. And if you're interested in being a guest, feel free to let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you both. So empowering, so inspirational, a lot of information. But before we close out today's event, I want to thank you both for being here. Alan, for pulling this together and making sure our community has this information that we need. What we'll be doing, as I promised, is sending a thank you email next week with a copy of this video session. We will also include the contact information for both Carrie and Kelly. So if you'd like to contact them with some of these handles. And then if you want to speak on their podcast, reach out to them directly. And then last but not least, if you want more information about NextGen Nexus and or Friends of NextGen LA, we'll have Heath Goldman one of our leadership committee members and chair for this initiative on the thank you email, so you can just click and email him and ask questions about it. So with that, on behalf of Los Angeles Consulting Group and NextGen Nexus, we want to thank you for participating in today's event. Please be kind to one another. My name is Kathleen Tepley, and we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.